Maria had always been a hard-working and independent woman. She had a good job, a loving family, and a wide circle of friends. But one evening, as she was walking home from work, she was suddenly grabbed from behind and dragged into a van by a man she had never seen before. The man was tall and muscular, with a scar above his left eyebrow and a cold, cruel expression on his face. He told Maria that he despised women and that he had been watching her for weeks, waiting for the right moment to strike. He tied her up and blindfolded her, then drove her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. For days, Maria was kept captive in a small, dark room with no windows and no furniture except for a dirty mattress on the floor. She was fed only bread and water and was beaten and tortured whenever she tried to resist. But Maria was determined not to give up. She fought back with all her strength and used her wits to try and find a way to escape. One day, while her captor was out, Maria managed to loosen the ropes that bound her hands and feet. She crawled along the floor, feeling her way through the darkness until she came to a door. She pushed it open and found herself in a long, narrow hallway that led to a larger room. As she cautiously made her way down the hallway, Maria heard the sound of voices coming from the other side of the door. She listened carefully and realized that her captor was not alone. There were other people in the room with him, all women, all bound and gagged like she had been. Maria knew that this was her chance to escape and to help the other women. She pushed open the door and rushed into the room, knocking her captor off balance. She grabbed a knife that was lying nearby and held it to his throat, demanding that he release the other women and let them go free. The man was surprised and momentarily distracted, giving Maria the opportunity to strike. She slashed at him with the knife, cutting his arm and causing him to drop his gun. Maria grabbed the gun and fired several shots, hitting him in the leg and shoulder. With her captor incapacitated, Maria quickly freed the other women and helped them to escape. They ran out of the warehouse and into the street, where they were met by a team of police officers who had been alerted by a neighbor who had heard the gunshots. Maria gave the police all the evidence they needed to catch the man who had kidnapped and tortured her and so many other women. She told them everything she had seen in the warehouse, including the cages where the other women had been kept and the tools and weapons that her captor had used to torture them. The police were able to use this information to track down the man's hideout and to rescue dozens of women who had been missing for weeks or even months. They found them locked in cages, some of them badly injured and traumatized. Thanks to Maria's bravery and quick thinking, the man who had caused so much pain and suffering was finally brought to justice. He was sentenced to life in prison, and the women he had abducted and tortured were able to begin the long process of healing and recovery. For Maria, the experience was both terrifying and empowering. She had survived the unthinkable and had emerged stronger and more determined than ever before. After the kidnapper was sentenced to life in prison, Maria thought she could finally breathe a sigh of relief and move on with her life. But she was wrong. One day, Maria received a chilling phone call from an unknown number. It was the kidnapper. He had broken out of prison and was coming for her. Maria was terrified, but she refused to let the kidnapper win. She knew she had to protect herself and her loved ones at any cost. She immediately called the police and installed a security system in her home. But one night, the kidnapper managed to break into Maria's house. He was armed and dangerous, and he had no intention of leaving without hurting her. Maria fought back with all her might, using the self-defense techniques she had learned after her first traumatic experience. She managed to injure the kidnapper so badly that he passed out. When the police arrived, they found the kidnapper lying on the ground, barely breathing. Maria was shaken but relieved that she had been able to defend herself. Unfortunately, the kidnapper's injuries were so severe that he died before he could be taken back to prison. Maria was devastated by what had happened, but she knew that she had done what she needed to do to keep herself and her loved ones safe. She became an advocate for self-defense and women's safety, determined to help others avoid the same fate she had suffered. In the end, Maria's courage and strength had not only saved herself, but also dozens of other women who had been victims of the kidnapper. Her story became a symbol of hope and resilience, inspiring women all around the world to stand up against violence and fight for their rights.